Welcome back to the Take a Step podcast, where we help young men embrace the process and take action. Today, we've got another edition of the Weekly Mile, where we take a look back at one of the previous editions of the Weekly Mile newsletter and dive in. The title of this week's edition of the Weekly Mile is Know Who You Represent. Have you ever had someone question your faith, not because of something you personally said or did, but because of how someone else lived their life? Maybe they pointed out how certain Christians act one way on Sundays and an entirely different way Monday through Saturday. Maybe they questioned your church because of a scandal, a contradiction, or hypocrisy they saw in another church member. And honestly, can you blame them? I agree with a lot of the criticism that gets thrown at Christians. It's frustrating to see how people proclaim Jesus with their mouths and deny him with their actions. It's discouraging when someone wears the title Christian, but their character looks no different than the rest of the world. It makes it hard to know what's real and who they can believe. But here's the truth. Just because someone is poorly represented doesn't mean it's false. Think of it this way. Imagine someone hires a personal trainer to get in shape. They do the workouts, they follow the advice, but don't see any real results because their trainer is unqualified or lazy. So they give up on fitness entirely? That didn't work. Fitness must be a scam. That wouldn't make sense, right? Or what if a guy gets cheated on and swears off dating forever? Hey, all women suck. Maybe I'll just be gay. I hope you could see the comedy side of that. But the point is, you don't judge a principle by its worst representative. That goes for relationships, training programs, and most definitely faith. So no, I won't argue when someone brings up the hypocrisy they've seen in the church, and I'll probably agree with them, honestly. But I won't let that be the reason they dismiss Jesus altogether. Because Jesus isn't the problem. People are. We are. The danger here is that when people reject faith because of a person, they end up rejecting truth because of a lie. And that's where the challenge comes in for you and me. If we claim to follow Jesus, then we are walking representations of him to the people around us, our families, our communities, our coworkers, our online circles. Every interaction, every decision, every habit either reinforces or weakens that message. The question becomes, does your life make people want to lean in and learn more about the way of Jesus? Like Romans 12:2 puts it like this: don't conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. That by testing, you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Renewal plus testing equals purpose. A lot of self-proclaimed believers live lives that fit right into the world's patterns, chasing status, prioritizing comfort, entertaining sin, and making decisions based on impulse rather than identity. And people notice. The reason Christian has become synonymous with hypocrite in our society isn't because Jesus was unclear. It's because so many who wear his name ignore his words. That's why representation matters. You're an image bearer of Christ, and the world is watching to see what that actually looks like. So here's the good news. When you live this out for real, something powerful happens. When someone truly walks in the way of Jesus, not perfectly, but purposefully, there's a noticeable difference. You can feel it. They carry a sense of peace that's hard to shake. They love deeply without needing anything in return. They have strength that doesn't feel arrogant and joy that isn't dependent on circumstances. That's rare and that's magnetic. You don't have to be loud. You especially don't have to be famous. You just have to be real. Real faith, real integrity, and real love. That's what causes people to lean in. Not because you argued them into believing, but because you showed them something that's incredibly rare in the world we live in today: authenticity. And let me be clear, this is not about perfection. It's about direction. It's about showing that you're living towards something and someone greater than yourself. So what now? If you claim to follow Jesus, then understand the weight of that. It's not a trend. It's not just a label you wear or a bio on your Instagram or on your necklace. It's a lifestyle that should shape how you handle adversity, temptation, relationships, failure, ambition, everything. The world doesn't need more cultural Christians. It needs men who are courageous enough to walk the narrow road. Men who won't just talk about it, but will be about it. It needs men who represent Christ so well that people are willing to reconsider everything they thought they knew about faith. That starts with you. The reason you might hear a little bit of extra passion behind the words that you hear right now is because this was my life. this was something that I lived out on a day-to-day basis. I look back on really my upbringing, and I had an amazing family with strong Christian values, and it's something that I'm very blessed to have had. But at the same time, I would have considered myself a cultural Christian back when I was growing up, because I was someone that subscribed to a certain way of life, wore the label, had the cross necklace, everything I did in the church today, because if someone looked at my life, I would have been an addition to why people felt so strongly about Christian hypocrites, because I was one. I was saying one thing and living another way. We as believers have a standard to uphold. Jesus came and set the standard, and this is not me saying that we're going to get it perfect every day, or even that our salvation comes through our works, because it doesn't. We are saved by grace and grace alone. But at the same time, a tree by the fruit it produces. I believe it's Matthew 7 that we see that, but it's black and white. A good tree produces good fruit. A bad tree produces bad fruit. A tree that doesn't produce any fruit at all is a dead tree. So what kind of fruit is being produced through your life? Is the way you live a walking representation of the way of Christ or not? Because that's what people will look to, and that's what people will call out when calling out the hypocrisy of Christians. So it's on us to be a representation of Christ by the way we live, because that's the way that's the life that we subscribe to when we claim to be a follower of Jesus. So here are 3 questions to really help you generate momentum and step into this life that God's calling you to. 1, where in your life are you most tempted to blend in with the world's patterns instead of being set apart? 2, when people observe your life, what would they assume about the God you follow? That's a good one, because, like I said a second ago, we are a walking representation of the God we claim to serve. And then 3, what's one intentional change you can make this week that would better reflect Christ in your daily habits, conversations, or priorities? Thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Take a Step podcast. If you enjoyed it, please leave a rating or a review on whichever platform you're listening. And always remember that no matter where you are on your growth journey, every mile begins with a step. We'll talk to you in the next episode.